Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Stop Complaining, Work Harder. I'm Carey Davis, the face for radio, right here in the Work Harder studios, and I have 33 years in the U.S. government, 25 of which were as a manager from all levels, from a trainee all the way up to the C-suite in Washington, D.C. and beyond. I'm here to give you the benefit of my mistakes. And boy, howdy, were there a bunch of them. But today's episode, while you're here, first, stay tuned to the end. We got a great bullshit bingo for you today. It's one that's prominent in today's world that you'll be able to see every day, and it's funny. So stay tuned for that. Go ahead, hit the like button. Follow me. Hell, hit the don't like button. I don't care. Tell me what you think about this. Give me some suggestions. Today's episode, I'm kind of going to follow up on one I've already discussed where one of the viewers asked, what do I got to do to become a supervisor? And this kind of goes along with that, but also it's important for sitting supervisors. Very important. And that is writing skills. You think writing skills? Of course I can write. I went to college. I don't care if you went to college. If you went to college in the last 20 years, the odds are you don't write well. Okay? The fact is ever since the commonality of computers in the late 90s, writing as a skill has been going downhill in this country so fast, it's almost silly. And I saw it every day because I had to have reports written by people of all ages. And those people who grew up in the age of you can't bring your calculator to class to please don't bring your supercomputer to class, the older ones always had better writing skills. Why? Because they were expected to. And that's a point I'm going to bring up later, what to expect as a manager. I can tell you what I expect. I expect an adult human being over the age of 20 to be able to write without using run-on sentences and using the correct punctuation, getting their point across, being eloquent, but not so eloquent that they're using bullshit words for no good reason. And I will not accept non-lawyers trying to sound like a lawyer, because as all lawyers will tell you, nothing is more stupid reading than a person who's not a lawyer, who hasn't had that training, trying to write like one. And in law enforcement, particularly federal law enforcement, that happens a lot because people try to emulate what they see the lawyers have written. When I see a non-lawyer use the term to wit, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Sorry, those of you under the age of 40, a chalkboard is something the teachers used to write on before the invention of whiteboards and laptops. And probably a better, more ecologically friendly thing to have in the classroom anyway. But that said, chalkboard is what you see in front of your favorite bistro when you go have lunch. And they've very nicely written the menu on it. We used to use those in classrooms. Anywho, I digress. Let's talk about writing skills. Am I going to teach you to be a better writer? Hell no, that's your fucking problem. Okay? You need to learn to be a better writer. Take a course, go on the internet, look, read things that were written back in a time when people actually took pride in their writing. Go to your office and read reports from 10 years ago. I can tell you, having worked across the spectrum of the federal government, everything from law enforcement to administrative services to HR, everything, all the things I did, I got to see a lot of different writing styles and a lot of different writing abilities. And like I said, I watched the ability to write degrade. I can tell you in the early 90s when I worked for the INS, they expected me as a lowly little GS5 to be able to write a report so good it could be presented to a judge as evidence in a case that would affect another human being's life. Does that mean I was a good writer? Shit, no. I was terrible. But what I had were supervisors and colleagues who were extremely good writers, and they expected no less from me. They expected a solid product. I was expected to turn something in that they would not have to edit heavily. Nowadays, what I see is a lack of that expectation. I'll explain that more in a second. So that was with the INS, and that's really the greatest foundation I could have gotten, was being able to write well. And it didn't take me long. I learned to write to fit that situation. I actually came up with boilerplates for all the different situations I could get. I actually made a book, a little handwritten book. This is how you fill out all the forms, and this is how you should write everything, the formats you use, everything. And I've still got it in one of the boxes, but it was literally how to do your paperwork as an INS officer back in the 90s, early 90s. And this was before the computer, before forms you could fill out. We still used a Swintech electric typewriter back then. No, we didn't have, monks transcribing things on vellum. I'm not that old, but close. So I learned to write at a reasonably young age. College certainly didn't teach me. That was a whole different world. But having supervisors that expected me to write well. And I'll never forget, time went on. And then DHS was formed in 2003, and I wound up in Washington, D.C. Interestingly enough, writing was valued, but what I didn't see were managers that expected good writing at a low level. What I saw were high-level managers who had become high-level editors. And they accepted the fact that people would bring them products that they didn't like, and they would red pen all over it and then hand it back and have it rewritten. And that's fine. But the people coming up didn't learn anything by that. After a while, they simply expected their products to have the shit edited out of them and to have to rewrite it. I know I was one of those guys. I'd tell you, well, I'd say about the third edit will hit what he wants or what the boss wants, And, everybody's different. Every boss has different expectations, but I can tell you by the time it made it to an executive director's desk like mine, it better be perfect. I spent, back then before computer correspondence, we had a correspondence sheet with everybody's initials on it. They had to read it and sign off on it. And I would usually start my day. I would get in early around 6 a.m, start my day and go through all of those correspondence packages of different papers, usually 20 or 30 of them a day at least. And I would read them. And I'm reading them for two reasons. One, I want to make sure it's something that I agree with because I'm about to put my name on it, and you can't unput your name on it. And I want to make sure it's written well and correct, grammatically correct, factually correct. The lawyer's job is legal sufficiency. My job is to make sure it's something that I want to say because it's going to have my name on it. And so, you go through all these things, you say, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. Well, I've had bosses that would sit there and edit it and red pen it. Don't get rid of this, do that, My theory was always call the employee in. This sucks. Fix it. Well, what's wrong with it? You need to read it and tell me what's wrong with it. Give me a product that is not a piece of shit. And generally they would come back on their own because it would force them to do all these things, force them to learn. Now, obviously, if time was an issue, then, there you go. But I can tell you one thing as a manager, never, ever, ever, ever correct it yourself. Never. That's not your job. Your job is to expect good work. High expectations produce high results. That's a baseline. If you accept work that is less than good and then fix it yourself, you will never develop employees to take your place. And that is the first responsibility of any manager, is to make sure that they can be replaced. That's it. I learned that from guys who've been officers in the military. They all told me your first job is to be replaced. Why? Because if you get into combat, you're probably going to get killed. Someone needs to be able to step up and take your place. And that sounds morbid, but it's true. So in the civil servant world, the odds are you're going to get promoted. You're going to retire. You're going to relocate. You're going to be reassigned. Something's going to happen and you're going to lead that shop. You will not lead a shop forever. Odds are 2 years, maybe 3 at best. If you're sitting somewhere 4 years after you were moved there, good chance that you've timed out. That you're, unless it's a location like you got family, but you're not in DC, you got family there, this is where you're going to be forever and all that, that's fine. But once you become a supervisor, you do 4 years somewhere and it's time to start looking up or away. My opinion, I stayed longer, I've stayed less time, but on average 4 years, and you're either getting stale or you've been sidelined. So just think about that. Different topic, maybe a different episode, but nonetheless, at CBP they valued writing, but it wasn't it wasn't put on the pedestal that it was at the INS. In the INS, and you can think whatever you want of that agency, I happen to think that the Bush administration made a gargantuan mistake getting rid of the INS. My opinion, we did far better work. The border was far more secure between 9/11 and March 1st, 2003, because the INS was allowed to do their job. Again, different rant. I won't get on. But CBP didn't value writing, and they still don't. They still don't. They don't expect a journeyman CBP officer to be able to write. And if they get into a position where they do have to write because they're union things, they're going to send them to a school and they're going to learn a bunch of boilerplates, but they're not expected to know basic grammar and all that. But I can tell you, I had one great boss when I was at headquarters. He was a deputy assistant commissioner, fantastic. He was a school teacher and didn't play any games. And I brought him a product that he decided wasn't up to his standard. And he had very high standards. And he said, come here. And I walked around the desk and he pointed, instead of editing, he just pointed at it. He goes, is this you? Did you write this? And I said, well, I had it written for me. He goes, but you read it. You proofread it, right? Yeah. He goes, look close at this and you tell me what's wrong with it. And he made me sit down and go through every line of that paper and tell him what I thought was wrong with it. He never said, yes, it was right or wrong while I was going through it. He just listened. And then he went back and corrected me on my corrections. And I probably learned more from that 30-minute session about how to write well and how to edit well and what to look for than everything else I've ever done. Everything. And this guy retired shortly thereafter. It was too bad for me, but good for him, and I hope he's doing well. But anyways, and you need people like that. And if you can't write, and you need to admit to yourself, can you write or can you not write? If you struggle writing, if you need someone to go over everything and you really can't on the fly put together a paper, you take a course, go to your community college, go online, do something, but take a creative writing course, take a report writing course. They're out there. Don't expect the government to do that for you. Do not expect the government to help you out one bit. Not going to happen. So, and do you really want to write the way the government says to write? I mean, anyways, I can go on. But anyway, so time went on, and I eventually wound up at the Department of Transportation. And the interesting thing about DOT is that they do highly technical, highly scientific work. Literal scientists, PhDs, far as the eye can see. I ran field operations, so I had a bunch of retired military, retired law enforcement, retired firefighters, some young people coming up, all this great people, fantastic people. The highest caliber people I ever worked with, as far as mental capacity, were certainly at DOT. But by and large, they didn't write well. I've never seen so many run-on sentences in my life. Like third grade teachers probably see this many run-on sentences as I did with DOT. And frankly, it's not because they're not educated or can't write or any of that. It's because their bosses allowed it. It's because they spent their entire life writing that way, and it's what they're used to saying, and they're using kind of stream of consciousness when they write, and it comes out as a run-on sentence. And then they're not taking the time to go back and edit it. But moreover, what really hurt them, and I'm not, the people that do this are wonderful, and I'm not saying you got to get rid of them. They certainly serve a purpose. But DOT actually hires technical writers, and I'm sure a lot of government agencies do. And when you're writing a technical paper, a technical writer is a very important part of that process. But what the employees started to do was to lean on them for editing. They would write up a bunch of garbage and throw it at the tech writer, thinking it would be edited and a good, clean product that was presentable to the world would come out. And that's not, in my opinion, a technical writer's role. technical writers there to make sure it's technically correct, not just technically correct because they're not the scientists, but written in the correct format, but basics, run-on sentences, when to use a comma, when to use a period, how many spaces behind a period. That's an argument I'll get into in a bit, pet peeve of mine. All these things, that's what the technical writer, they put it together, make it look like a proper package. But they shouldn't have to for every single paper that comes out. And so what I saw was, because the employees had this crutch to lean on, they didn't put the effort into their writing very well. It's not that they couldn't. They just didn't put the effort because there was someone to do that for. I personally have an issue with this. But the other side, and I was as much as fault as anyone else, as an executive, I didn't expect perfection. And neither did my colleagues. And I actually had this conversation with them. We're not expecting perfection in writing. Therefore, we're not getting good writing, and we're having to do a lot of corrections ourselves in the C-suite, and where you should never do that. It should be, hand me a perfect product, or your ass is on the line. Or to be nice and civil about it. It will affect your performance plan if you're not writing well. That's what we should have done. But no, we were kinder and gentler, and therefore the writing suffered. Well, this is what I can tell you. If you want to be a supervisor one day, or you're a supervisor and you want to be promoted, or you just have pride. And that goes a long way, everybody. Have some pride in yourself and your work. You'll learn to write well. And you will make damn sure that any written product you provide is perfect. Now, if the reader doesn't like the content, that's fine. That's another discussion. But the reader shouldn't have to say, why the hell do you have a semicolon here? That's where a comma goes. Or why is this sentence 18 lines long? I used to have a boss years ago. He would read your paper and say, every time you put a comma in a sentence, it's going to cost you $1. What? He goes, if you got more than 2 commas in any given sentence, you've overused commas. You're wrong. You should not do this. And so that's the kind of thing you have to do to make people realize, what they're doing when they're writing. And I keep hammering on run-on sentences because it is the most common issue. People want to write like they speak, and that turns into run-on sentences. And so the way you fix that is write like you speak, write your report, and then go through, and then when you see the run-on sentence, John went to the store and he bought some bread and he bought some milk and he met Kathleen and they talked about Tuesday night and he bought some ice cream and he went home and da. If you're doing this, if you've got a bunch of commas, you write it as you would speak, and then reread it. And everywhere there's a comma, put a period. Slice the and away. And you have separate sentences. Now, it may not read well. It may be choppy at that point. Re-edit it. Write it so it's not choppy. Write it so it looks better. But it will get rid of the run-on sentence and read easier. Because this may be a psychological thing. It may be a mental thing. But people read until it's not easy to read. So if you've got a 3-paragraph paper, your boss is probably going to read the first 2 sentences. Probably. May read the whole thing, but likely they're going to skim the first few sentences. And then they're going to say, okay, this is something I'm going to continue reading or not. If those first few sentences aren't attention grabbing, maybe they won't read further. But if those first few sentences are grammatically incorrect or a run-on sentence, they're going to stop reading. This is called bad. On the good-bad scale, this is bad. You don't want your boss to stop reading because your writing sucks. Or the way you've written it, because it's choppy, it makes it unreadable. It makes it difficult to read. Your mind goes, what? Why am I jumping from one thing to another here? So, back to pre-computer school. Write an outline. Write yourself an outline. Write what documentary writers call a treatment. My paper is going to be about X, Y, and Z and how they work together. Okay, how do X, Y, and Z work together? And then sit down and write it. But give yourself a go-by. an outline of sorts, a way to do this that's palatable so that people can read it and they're not turned off. Now, let's talk about some grammatical stuff. Now, I went on about run-on sentences. Ooh, bad run-on sentences. Don't do that. But let's talk about grammatical arguments of the modern age. And let's start with periods and the number of spaces after a period. Now, you can say, well, I learned in college that you only need one space after a period because it's the computer age and this is how we type now and you're old. Okay. When a period ends a sentence, there shall be 2 spaces after said period. You don't have to like it. You have to do it. There's a reason you do it. And the reason is what I just said. It makes the document easier to read, even on a computer screen. I don't know why. I don't care why. It makes the document easier to read. When the document is easier to read, your boss will read it longer. Got it? It's that simple. Period, 2 spaces, begin the next sentence. Just like begin sentences with a capital letter. Not really an argument, but it's that natural. You should always have 2 spaces after your period. I don't care what your humanities professor taught you. Go back to my other videos and you'll see that I'll tell you everything they told you was a lie. 2 spaces after a period. Commas should be used judiciously. As I discussed earlier, if you have more than 2, you better have a good goddamn reason. Real good reason. Again, look for run-on sentences. Semicolons have a place. I really don't know where that place is. They should be used sparingly. Colons go before you list something out. So the difference between a semicolon and a colon is semicolons, some English professor can tell me what I'm doing wrong, but I rarely ever use them. But a colon, 2 dots, stacked vertically, go before a list. So I have to go to the grocery store today. At the grocery store, I shall purchase, colon, bullet point, or number 1, bread, bullet point, or number 2, cola, bullet point, or number 3, ice cream, bullet point, or number 4, flour. That's what a colon is for. Or you can colon, and then I shall go to the grocery store and I'll buy, colon, bread, comma, flour, comma, bacon, comma, steak, comma, and you finish it with and. So, and this is an argument, and sometimes I'm wrong on this, but it's something I do not understand. So, Jack jumped over Jill, Ann, and Randy in order to get to the store. Jack jumped over Jill, comma, Ann, and Randy. Not Jill, comma, Ann, comma, and Randy. That's 2 pauses. The and is a pause, and the comma is a pause. So before an and, there is no comma when you're listing something out like that. Now, there are times where the comma is applicable, and you'll kind of have to figure that out. But 99% of the time, a comma should never go before the words and or but. Mostly and. And is where it always gets used. When I see these things, I go, and I don't know why. I'm not an English teacher. I'm not a prude about this stuff. But when I'm reading something, it makes it easier to read. Again, do you want your boss to see it and read the whole thing? Or do you want them to go, God damn, why would you put a comma in front of an and? Now the entire purpose of your paper has gone away because you put a comma in front of an and. And if you don't think it happens, you're wrong. It's a mental trick of some type, but it happens every day, and it makes you wrong. It diverts the attention. Now, damn, there's a run-on sentence here. Why am I reading a run-on sentence instead of, why am I reading about one of my employees who got in trouble? No, I see a run-on sentence. And you say, Carey, you're OCD. I'm the least OCD son of a bitch you'll ever meet. I'm a sloppy mess, okay? So, but these things are pet peeves of mine. It's like somebody who wears a tie crooked. It's wrong. Just wrong. Okay? Take pride in your writing. If you learn to write and you use grammar correctly, you will advance. If there's one thing that will get you noticed by your bosses, it is good writing. The less work on the back end they have to do to correct your crap, the more they'll be impressed by you. Okay? And that's whether you're trying to be a supervisor or you've been one for 20 years. Learn to write well. I got a buddy right now who wants to become an SES, and he is the world's worst offender of run-on sentences. Love the guy like a brother. Quit writing fucking run-on sentences. Come on. All right. Bullshit bingo time. I told you, hang around. It's going to be a good one. Now look, normally I use a word from the book. And I spent 3 years during COVID in meetings writing down every word or phrase that sounded like government douchebaggery. Okay? Got them all right here. 7 pages, single spaced. But today I'm going to talk about not even a word, a manner of speech that I've noticed with government employees, particularly high-level government employees. And I hate to be sexist or whatever the hell else you guys want to call me for this, but it's really about highly educated white females. I don't know why, but for some reason, and you see it at all levels and all political stripes, both sides of the aisle, but I call it the missing T, or the drop T. Let me explain. So when I see an adult human being who speaks English, who's been educated at some of the finest $100,000 a year universities, and who hangs around congressmen and senators and different politicians and other executives all day, and then they say the word important. Important. There is a T. Important. There's a T in there. And they'll get on television, and say, it's very important that we do this. I don't see dudes saying it. I don't know why. It's just the females. That's very important. Stop it. Just stop it. Goddamn. And it really seems to be coming out of Washington. It could be I'm wrong. It could be that it's just, it's just the younger generation. I doubt it. I've got a young adult daughter. She does not speak this way, at least not in front of me. And I've never gotten on to her about it because I've never had to. But if you are purposefully not stating your T's, you're wrong. It's just stupid. You sound stupid. You sound uneducated. And you're doing it on purpose. Your mother, back in 1999, didn't say that's very important for you to learn. That's not what your mom said. She didn't say, I was going to go there, but I didn't. That's not what your mother said. That's not what got you into Georgetown or Yale. And you know this. It's a learned behavior, and you're doing it on purpose. So stop. Pronounce your fucking T's. Act like a civil human being with an education, for God's sakes. Okay. That said, the other thing I'll joke about, and these are just things you start to notice. Those same women in D.C., when I was there, this goes back 10 years at least, ended their words with a growl. Ended their sentence with a growl. Someone described once, and I just can't remember the thing. If you can remember what this is called, put it in the comments for me, but it's, well, we're going to go to the grocery store this afternoon. I think we'll be having a press conference at 3. You see what I'm saying? Listen to them when they get on television. These people are still there. They still talk this way. Listen, watch the news and listen to the high-level Washington people speak. It's funny. It is just funny to listen to. Anyway, that's it for this episode. So stop complaining. Work harder. More to come. Davis out.